There's a reason your body works this hard to keep one specific thing alive. And it's not what most people assume. For a long time, the vaginal microbiome was talked about mostly in terms of comfort. Odor, discharge, itching, minor, manageable stuff. But newer research points at something far more serious sitting underneath all of that. Protection against actual disease transmission. Here's the mechanism. A healthy vaginal environment is dominated by lactobacillus, and that bacteria produces something called lactic acid. Not just any acid either, specifically D-lactic acid, in concentrations research has shown can physically trap and inactivate viruses before they get the chance to establish an infection. One lab study found that mucus dominated by Lactobacillus crispatus was significantly more effective at trapping HIV particles than mucus from women with a different, more diverse bacterial community. The difference wasn't small. It was the difference between a defense system working exactly as designed and one that simply isn't there. So, what happens when that protective bacteria isn't dominant anymore? This is where the research gets harder to ignore. A meta-analysis pulling together 23 separate studies found that bacterial vaginosis, the disruption of that same lactobacillus-dominated environment, was associated with a 60% increase in the risk of acquiring HIV. Not a marginal statistical blip. A 60% increase across multiple long-term studies tracking real infection outcomes. And there's a real-world example that makes this even harder to dismiss as coincidence. Researchers studying sex workers in Rwanda, a population with extremely high exposure risk, found that the women whose microbiomes were dominated by Lactobacillus crispatus had the lowest rates of both HIV and other sexually transmitted infections. Same exposure level. Different bacterial environment, different outcome. But HIV isn't the only thing this protective layer seems to be holding back. Multiple studies have also linked vaginal dysbiosis to increased risk of HPV infection, the virus responsible for the vast majority of cervical cancer cases. Researchers believe there are two things happening at once. First, an overgrowth of disruptive bacteria triggers ongoing low-grade inflammation, which can actually damage cellular DNA over time. Second, without enough lactobacillus to keep the environment acidic, the vaginal pH rises, and that higher pH creates conditions where HPV finds it easier to establish an infection in the first place, which reframes something most people have never really considered. This isn't just about symptoms being annoying or inconvenient. This is an active immune mechanism, running quietly in the background, deciding in real time how vulnerable or protected the body actually is. Here's the part that catches most people off guard, though. You can't feel any of this happening. There's no symptom that reliably tells you your protective bacteria has been displaced. No alarm goes off when the ecosystem shifts from a protective, lactobacillus-dominant state into a higher diversity, higher risk one. Many women with disrupted microbiomes report no symptoms at all, right up until an unrelated test reveals something else going on entirely. So the body isn't just managing comfort down there. It's running a defense system, one that depends entirely on which bacteria happen to be winning the daily competition.